The earth is warming, animals are vanishing, sea levels are rising, glaciers are melting, we are dying.
We need to cut global emissions in half by 2030 and get to net zero by 2050.
It is happening. No more waiting.
Act now or never.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Talking Mouse. My name is Sarah, and my co-host is Caroline.
Hi guys, it's us again. So, in responding to the COP26 event that is happening right now, we decided to launch another total brand new series dedicating to climate change, global warming, and all the environmental issues. And so today is the first episode of that brand new series in which we will be talking about the current COP26 event and all the initiatives surrounding that event in particular.
So, without further ado, let's get started. So, first up, what is COP26?
So COP stands for Conference of the Parties, and it has happened since 1995. This is an annual event or conference that brings together those that have signed the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC, an international environmental treaty addressing climate change. And so this year will be the 26th annual conference. So that's why it's called COP26. And with the UK, United Kingdom, as the president, the 26th COP event was meant to take place in Glasgow, Scotland last year, but it was postponed due to the COVID pandemic. So instead of that, it is happening now, right now, from the 1st of November to the 12th of November. So in the run-up to the COP26, the UK is working with every nation to reach agreement on how to tackle climate change. So world leaders will arrive in Scotland alongside with tens of thousands of negotiators, government representatives, businesses, and citizens for 12 days of talks. So government officials are expected to discuss technical issues including carbon credits, funding for countries vulnerable to climate change and nature-based solution in the first week of the summit. And then in the second week, they will be covering topics including gender, transportation, and the practical solutions needed to adapt to climate change consequences. Yeah, that's basically what COP means. So why is it important, you may ask? And Sarah will be here to answer your question.
So, to really understand the importance of COP26, let's go back to 2015 with the Paris Agreement and COP21. So, COP21 took place in Paris in 2015. And for the first time ever, every country agreed to work together to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees and aim for exactly 1.5 degrees. So that is where the Paris Agreement was born. Basically, the Paris Agreement was a legally binding treaty that was it was the first legally binding treaty that was signed by all countries in an effort to fight climate change. So specifically under the Paris Agreement, countries committed to bring forward national plans, setting out how much they would reduce their emissions, known as nationally determined contributions or NDCs. So every country, so they agreed that 5 years later they would come back with an updated plan, and that would reflect their highest possible ambition at that time. So in simple words, COP26 is when they deliver the results of what they have done in the past 5 years and what they're aiming to do in the future.
Okay, so before we get into the summary of the timeline, basically, of the COP26 event, we'll be talking about the goals for this COP26 event, basically. So, Sarah, what are the main goals of this event in particular?
So there are 4 goals that they've put out for the COP26. The first being secure global net zero by mid-century and keep 1.5 degrees within reach. Second, adapt to protect communities and natural habitats. The third goal is mobilize finance. Developed countries must make good on their promise to mobilize at least 100 billion in climate finance per year by 2050. And the fourth goal is to work together in order to fight climate change together. So Caroline, I believe that our audiences are very curious as to what has happened up till now in COP26. So shall we give them a glimpse into what has been happening at COP26 for the past week?
Okay, sure, let's get to it. So on Monday, the 1st of November, I feel like this day is typically used for roll call and, discussing the main goals and just basic information about this event. So, in this event, in this day, Joe Biden, the current president of the United States, he had a speech earlier on in the day, and so he proclaimed that let this be the moment that we enter history call here in Glasgow, and I quote. But there was this kind of very interesting thing because the protection of potency was somewhat undermined because one of his senators under his presidency has this kind of fossil fuel love. On one side, Joe Biden proclaims that we should fight for climate change, but on the other hand, one of his senators is doing exactly the opposite. So that's quite interesting and just kind of counter his arguments. But anyway, so on this day, because it's for roll call, there were some absentees. So for example, the Brazil share Bolsonaro, president of the world's biggest deforesting nation, Saudi Arabia's Mohammed bin Salman, crown prince of the world's second largest oil pumper, and Russia, Vladimir Putin, president of the world's second biggest gas producer, and China, Xi Jinping, president of the biggest coal consumer and carbon emitter, was also missing, but he had a signal owing to the COVID crisis, but again, he's still missing. But yeah, that's the roll call.
So, Caroline, given that a lot of nations representatives were missing from the first day of COP26, do you think how much commitment do they pay to fighting the climate change together?
Okay, so I personally think that I think this is kind of a everlasting situation that has been going on not only in COP26 but also the previous COPs, because as we can probably tell, even though I think like even if they were to be present at that day, I feel like the commitment wasn't to 100%, because we have seen that in previous promises that they made in previous COP events. Yeah, in the past they said they would do, fight climate, for example, the Paris Agreement that we mentioned earlier, but they absolutely completely, did the opposite, or undermined their promise in the end. So I do feel like even if they were to be present, I feel like the commitment wasn't 100%. Like we would like to receive, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so moving on to the second day, Sarah, can you summarize, the second day and what it's about for us, please?
So the second day of the conference is about deforestation. So the declaration on ending deforestation by 2030. So at first sight, this sounded like an awful lot like the 2014 New York Declaration on forests and to end by 2030. But which has so far failed to have, tree clearance, or currently at a rate of 30 football pitches a minute, according to Jack Goldsmith. But there are some important differences. This time, there are some serious money behind the initiative. So there are 19.2 billion from governments and the private sector. One of the major forest nations are signed up, and there is an extra package for 1 billion for indigenous communities who are the most affected forest guardians. So it may seem like it's reiterating something that has been said in 2014, but this time there are some actions has been taken, like there are money to fund for the initiative. So that's a one plus sign for some that.
I heard that there are people questioning about the credibility because Indian has their way, and Indonesia has already undermined their promise, because after they signed the declaration to end forest deforestation, they are trying to call it fake and call it ineffective. So like, can we trust again? Are there any commitments or any credibility here, do you think?
I think that this is because for no, we're working towards an effort to fight climate change, and all nations have to chip in, like even just the smallest. And many nations have excuses because there are developed country and developing countries, and so the developing countries, they are asking that they don't have enough time because they finish war at the time when most developed countries has finished their industrial area era. So it's really unfair for them. So now it's like their time to develop. But like I think that calculate whether if it's our sakes, for our nation's sake, or the sake of the whole nation, the sake of the the global
Yeah.
climate change. Because if the climate change isn't solved, and then there's no point in developing young nations if there's nothing
Yeah.
left after that.
Let's talk about Wednesday. So Wednesday is about methane and methane emission. And the highlight of this day was, an alliance of more than 90 nations, covering two-thirds of the global economy, committing to reduce methane emissions by at least 30% from 2020 levels by the end of the decade. But anyway, so the difference about methane and carbon dioxide is that because methane, even though it's extremely potent, it can be removed from the atmosphere, whereas CO2 is more stubborn and it stays in the atmosphere for longer. So methane causes immediate consequences, but why CO2, they accumulate and it causes extreme consequences over a longer period of time. And so yeah, this initiative is being led by the US, and followed by China, India, and Russia. And so this can significantly reduce global heating to less than 2 degrees like we originally hoped for. But bear in mind that all of these calculations are based on the assumption that every nation in the world keep their promise. Yeah. So that's basically Wednesday. So what's about Thursday?
So Thursday is coal day. So coal is basically one of the fossil fuels that that is like most used in the world. Even our Vietnam, it's one of the leading. It was one of the country that use coal the most in the world. So on this day, more than 40 countries agreed to phase out coal-fired power. Canada, South Korea, Ukraine, Indonesia, and Vietnam too. So they said that they would quit this dirtiest form of fossil fuels between 2030 to 2030 and 2040. So even Poland signed up, which is remarkable given its devotion to coal was so great. I think like there's a lot of sarcastic things coming from this conference. Okay. So the US, China, Australia, and India keep coal alive outside this agreement, but the alliance would try to wear them down. Meanwhile, progress was being made, and according to the IEA, which announced that the extra commitments made so far could take warming down to 1.8 degrees Celsius. So Caroline, as I've said, this is the date when our Prime Minister, Phạm Minh Chính, has given a speech on, Vietnam's commitment toward fighting climate change. So what is his speech really about?
Yeah, okay. So a little disclaimer, his speech was taken on the first day, not this day. But because, we heard that it mentioned Vietnam here, so we might as well just, read you his speech right here. So I will read his speech, and we will of course link the article or his speech down in the description so that you can, reread it whenever you like. Okay. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, climate change has truly become the greatest challenge to mankind. Extreme weather phenomena and sea level rise are seriously affecting the food and water security, the sustainable development, and even the survival of many countries and communities. This warning from nature compels us to put forward strong measures and act responsibly without further delay at the global level. As this is a global issue, a global approach is required. As this issue affects every person, an inclusive approach is necessary. Therefore, I wish to propose the following. First, climate change response and the restoration of nature must become the highest priority in all development decisions. They must form the highest ethical standards for all levels, sectors, businesses, and citizens. Science and technology must lead the charge, and financing must lend leverage to the transitioning of the development model towards a green, circular, sustainable, inclusive, and humanistic economy. All that we do must be nature-based and centered around people, for they are the actors and drivers of sustainable development in order to leave no one behind. Second, all countries need to make strong commitments on greenhouse emissions reduction, grounded in the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, respective capacities and circumstances. Let me take this opportunity to call for justice and fairness in the fight against climate change. This is imperative to limit the global temperature increase. For its part, although we are a developing country that started industrialization only over 3 decades ago, Vietnam will capitalize on its advantage in renewable energy and take stronger measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. To this end, we will make use of our domestic resources along with the cooperation and support of the international community, especially from developed countries, in terms of finance and technology, including through mechanisms under the Paris Agreement in order to achieve net zero emission by 2050. Third, climate change, technology transfer, and capacity building play a critical role in ensuring the success of the Paris Agreement. Developed countries, being major emitters in the past in exchange for present economic prosperity, need to fully meet their existing financial commitments. At the same time, it is urgent for us to arrive at more ambitious financial targets for the post-2025 period. Ladies and gentlemen, as one of the countries worst affected by climate change, Vietnam is making every effort to both respond to climate change and foster economic development to grow and ensure an ever better life for its people, while contributing responsibly alongside the international community. We look forward to advancing cooperation with international partners through investment programs and projects and sustainable development. President Ho Chi Minh, the hero of national liberation and world's man of culture, once said, "Unity, unity, great unity. Success, success, great success." If we are to succeed in the global fight against climate change, global solidarity is the only way. Together we will discuss, work, and win. Our unity must stem from our will, awareness, and solutions, and endure as we make and execute plans and to ensure resources. Our historic commitments and action will help preserve a green planet and sustainable habitat and lasting happiness for generations to come. Thank you very much. Yeah, that is Phạm Minh Chính remarks at COP26.
So I believe that is, very one of the significant highlights of COP26 being Vietnam. It's like one of the two nations, Asian nations, to give a speech at COP26. So yeah, I believe that as Vietnamese citizens, we would hope to successfully deliver the results that has been committed at the COP26. So more information regarding what we could do, what we should do in the future, what can be done right now, will be discussed in our future episodes of the climate change series. So stay tuned. So moving on to Friday, thousands of young protesters marched through Glasgow to demand urgent climate action. So CNN has yet to verify those numbers with police. However, teams on the ground saw jam-packed protests with people from different social, cultural, and political groups to send out the message to world leaders that the time is now.
So moving on to the last day of week 1, which is Saturday, the 6th of November, which is dedicated to talking about agriculture and land use. So 26 nations set out new commitments to change their agricultural policies to become more sustainable and less polluting, and to invest in the science needed for sustainable agriculture and for protecting food supplies against climate change. All continents were represented, with countries including like India, Colombia, Vietnam, Germany, Ghana, and even Australia. So, for example, Germany's plan is to lower emission from land use by 25 million tons by 2030. And also the UK's aim is to engage 75% of its farmers in low carbon practices by 2030. So, all the policies are focused and centered to, end everything around like 2030. So it's very interesting. So this decade is also very crucial. Yeah, that's interesting.
Like 2030, it's like a big year. That's the time when we're supposed to deliver our results for in responding to the SDGs, the 16 SDGs. Remember that, Caroline?
Yeah, from from United UN, like United Nations. Yeah, and also that's when we turned 27. You believe that? Oh my God, we're getting so old. But anyway, yeah. Let's move and talk about the second week of COP26. So on Monday, the 8th of November, it's all about adaptation and loss and damage day. So global leaders commit to a shift towards more locally led adaptation through over 70 endorsement to the principle for locally led adaptation and over $450 million mobilized for initiative and programs enhancing locally led approaches, including the Life RA, the FL LOCA, etc., etc. And also on this day, there's an opening statement from COP President Alok Sharma. And so, yeah, but like for some time limitation, we will, instead of reading it out loud, we can link it down below the like description with along with all other resources for you to go investigate and read it yourself. Yeah. Okay.
So moving on, which is Tuesday, November 9th, it's basically on Gender Day. So on this day, um, many countries committing to promote the leaderships of especially women and indigenous Afro-Bolivian community and rural women through their involvement in sustainable development goals. And also this is like as well to reflect the data in the NDCs, to work with UN Women to promote the use of gender breakdowns in official national statistics on environment and climate change. So whether it's any goals that is put out by the United Nations, there should be sufficient, there should be diverse, like with the leadership of women as well as men, not just not just one, not just the role of any particular group of people. And just like that, there are many initiatives, that are contributed by nations like Canada, ensure that 80% of its $5.3 billion to eliminate investments over the next 5 years, target gender equality outcomes, and much more.
Yeah.
So okay.
Many of you may wonder why gender take a role in all of this climate change. But climate change affect mostly indigenous people, mostly women. So but indigenous people, they own 20% or 30% of the global land use. So in a sense, they are very critical in the fight against climate change. But instead, they are undermined and they are suffering from the worst consequences of climate change. So yeah, that's why we have Gender Day. Okay. Yeah, so that's basically sum up of all the events
Really
that are
all.
happening. Yeah, not really all, but because we are filming that and recording is on the 10th of November, so technically it's all. But we will be sure to leave some resources again in the description so that you can go read it themselves and update yourself on the latest news for the last 2 days of this event. Yeah.
So basically, we have gone through, you guys get a glimpse of what has been happening at COP26, all the plans, all the initiatives being put out by nations. But that's not, the most important thing that we want to deliver to you guys here, because, well, COP26 is just a conference. It's just a reflection as to what we have done. And it's a promise to something that we will do in the future, but it's not the end. It's not the means to fight global climate change. And so that we hope that when you watch this video and you follow up more on the resources that we have put out in the description box, then you guys will learn more, will educate yourself more on climate change. It's something that we should all take part in. It's not the job of any particular person. It's the time is now, like we've said, but it is an ongoing situation that maybe we if we're living in big cities, we cannot really feel the what has been going on, but it's really happening. And so bear that in mind, because it might as well be normal right now for you, for me, for us, that we're looking at our worlds through our naked eyes, but we really don't know what's happening to our earth to the people that are in, indigenous people, to the communities that far away. We don't really know that, but our actions have consequences. And so we really hope that you guys would educate yourself more on this topic and do the littlest thing that you guys could do to fight for climate change. Start with maybe your diet, start with your habits, your routine, everyday life. We will, provide more information as to what the youth, us, should do in the future to, to be a part of this climate change battles together.
Yeah, I agree. Like I just have goosebumps when you say that. But yeah, I just want to, add something to that is the fact that we get the chance to live in the city and where, we have technology, we don't really see the consequences is a blessing in itself. And so I feel like with great, blessing comes great responsibility. And yeah, and even though you may think like your contribution is not big or is the littlest, but like they add up, right? Because if there's this analogy that I just thought of, like so the world, like we have 8 billion people on this planet, and so if one person's contribution is equal to the rest, then there shouldn't be 8 billion people. So there's 8 billion people for a reason. Yeah, so that's where our kind of collective power comes in. And I feel like just by educating yourself on this particular matter, because it really is the battle of our generation, like because we will see the clearest consequences of this particular battle along with everything else. But I feel like, yeah, we just want to provide you with the simplest terms, the simplest concept, and the simplest kind of explanation from coming from high school students about climate change. And yeah, I watched a documentary almost about TED with of TED. I told you this, but like it's called Countdown because it really is a countdown. Yeah, because you have probably gained from hearing us. If we don't act now, or if we don't cut our carbon emission by half and by the end of 2030, there will not be no more solutions. That even if we have the technology, we will not have the time, because the earth needs time to recover, and so we just cannot just it's not overnight. So I really think that we should take action, and because we are the leaders of tomorrow, we really should take it in our own hands. And yeah, even though you don't think that your efforts is it's not big, it really is, and it's add up. Yeah, so that's my final remarks on that. Oh, we're getting so deep.
So that's that's our take for COP26 for now. But that's not the end. Remember, that's not the end.
Yeah,
We will be back with our next episode on what we should do to fight this climate change battles together. So stay tuned, stay safe,
Stay safe, stay green. Sorry, stay awesome.
Stay awesome. Bye.
Bye.